On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Alma about her toxic relationship with a future-faking conman. It's a story of grand gestures, elaborate scenes, victim playing, and constant little lies. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. This is a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning in to this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. Now, if you want to be part of our show, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. At the top of the page, there's a button that says Guest Form. Click on that button, and away we will go from there. And if you want to be on our show in a different way, to be part of our Letters to My Narcissist compilation episode by reading a letter yourself, go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. On the side of the page, there's a button that says Send Voicemail. Press that button, and it records up to 5 minutes. Press it twice, records up to 10. We are accumulating these letters for our Volume 6 of that episode. And if you do not want to read the letter yourself, and you want me or my old pal Melissa, who we haven't heard from in a while, hey Melissa, to read the letter for you, please just send it to I'm having a bad day. Please just send it to narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com and put Letters to My Narcissist in the subject line. And, you know, everyone, we have a Patreon. Our Patreon is like our community board. And there you can listen to episodes that have never made it to air, episodes with former guests, and more. We have our own support forum on there as well. And we have virtual support groups every Wednesday and Saturday, and that's between 9 and 11 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you want to support the show, go to our Patreon at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. Another way to support our show is to become a sponsor of our show. Our groups, our support services, they are paid for on a shoestring budget. So supporting our show and becoming a sponsor helps us with our support services and to also reach a larger audience. Sponsoring an episode of this podcast is a way to make a really big difference, and you'll be helping thousands of survivors. So please do consider sponsoring our show. And our episode this week was sponsored, or is sponsored, by JJ. And a plain old thank you is not big enough for how much we need to thank JJ. Words cannot do my thank you justice. Your generosity has blown my mind, and we'll be building this community stronger thanks to you. So a big thank you from me and everyone listening. You've helped change so many people's lives, and just a huge, huge, huge thank you. So, you know, if you want to be like JJ and you want to sponsor next week's episode or multiple episodes, we set up a payment on our Patreon at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse, and you'll get a special big shout out and a thank you at the beginning of each episode. And if you don't want to go through our Patreon, please email me at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com for alternatives. And now we are going to start our show. This episode with Alma is interesting. It's not like other episodes in a certain way. There's no devaluation or anything kind of going on. This is a true like con person, and they really wanted to keep that facade kind of going up and didn't want the flow of whatever was how Alma was helping them to stop monetarily and all these other ways. So a big thank you to Alma, who didn't consider her story worthy of being on the show, but every story is worthy. And a big thank you to Alma for for doing the show. And now, without further ado, here is my episode with Alma. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Alma. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Did I say it properly, Alma?
Yes, sir. You sure did. It's Alma in Spanish for soul in English.
All right. Well, thank you for being here today. And unfortunately, you are here. You know, you have been, I guess, a serial dater or relationship person with someone who is an abuser, is on the narcissistic spectrum of some sort. And, you know, you're here to share your knowledge, your story, and, you know, thank you for being here. Unfortunately, you're here, but you are, and I know you're going to help a lot of people. So, without further ado, Alma, the floor is now yours.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, thanks, Chad, for this. I appreciate the opportunity to have kind of this discussion. I found you about 3 weeks ago, and I have been listening to one episode after the other because I've obviously got hooked with the topic. Since I am one of these people that attracts one narcissist after another. And a lot of the women on the podcast have been amazing. They don't realize this, but they've helped so many people. And so that's what motivated me to kind of reach out to you, because I wanted to also be one of those that within my story, maybe I could help someone. So I'll start with a little bit about myself. I am 51 years old. I have a 26-year-old daughter. My family background is I'm the middle child. I have 4 brothers, and my dad was a narcissist. Actually, just recently I've realized after listening to this podcast, I've actually put a label on what my dad was. And so I was able to see my dad in so many of these stories and realize maybe why it is that I am what's the word I'm looking for? Attract these type of men. And realizing also that my 4 brothers are a bit narcissistic themselves. And so being the only girl, I was surrounded by this type of behavior my whole life. So at a young age, at 20, I got married, and I was married for 21 years. I won't talk much about that relationship because I do have a child. She's 26, but that is her father. Moving on from the 21 years of marriage, I got divorced, and I attracted my first narcissist. And he's not the one that I'm going to speak of today, but throughout listening to all the podcasts stories, I've realized the levels of narcissism that I've been exposed to have not been anything in comparison to some of these women on here. I guess I should be thankful because some of these stories that I've heard through your podcast are just make your skin crawl. And I'm just thankful that it hasn't, I haven't seen that, and I hope to never see that. But I guess the levels of narcissism are there's so many levels of them. And because of your podcast, I've realized of the differences between those. Nonetheless, I was exposed to my first narcissist, and then another, and then another. And so, as I mentioned to my daughter a few days ago that I was going to record this podcast with you, she says, "Well, Mom, which one are you going to discuss tomorrow. And I said, so I told her which narc I was going to be discussing. And she says, oh my gosh, this last one you dated, he is the worst. But I don't think I'm ready to talk about that one specifically, because I think I'm trying to kind of sort it all out and trying to kind of balance myself out of that relationship. But with the one that I'm going to discuss with today, I felt like I have dealt with a lot of the issues that transpired, and also that I've healed from that. If that sounds okay, I don't know. Obviously, if I attracted another, I don't know if necessarily healed is the right word, but I did get out of that one. And I guess the point of this story is that there is an out, and you just have to be brave and be strong enough. So, okay. So after that,
just 1 second. So let's just say here that you had 3 different narcissistic partners, and we're going to talk about number 2 today.
We are going to talk about number 3 today.
Oh, so you had 4 narcissistic partners, and we're going to talk about number 3 today.
Yeah, so keep in mind, I was raised in a Hispanic household. I was raised to believe I was going to get married once and be married forever with this one person. And that was my philosophy too. I was going to be that person. I was going to grow old with this man and have grandchildren and all those things. So after my marriage, I never thought I would move on to one man, a second man, a third man, or a fourth man. That was not my plan for myself at all. My plan was to have, as initially I said, to be with this one person, but it didn't happen. And so, yes, this is the third narcissist in my life. So I met him through a mutual friend. My friend and I have been, we've been friends since we were in middle school. She's been in my life for 30 plus years. And she was in town visiting. And so she says, hey, I'm in town. We're going to get together at my sister's house. I'd like for you to come. And I was like, great. I can't wait to see you guys. This is like her family was my family. We just kind of all grew up together, hung out. And so I went to their house, and she says, hey, do you remember, I'm going to call him Sal. Hey, do you remember Sal? And I was like, no, I don't remember. And she's like, he lived right up the street. He used to hang out all the time. And I was like, no, I don't recall. And she says, well, he's coming tonight. And, he's recently single. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was really not too interested because I had just in May prior, had gotten out of a relationship, and this was now July, and I was like done. I was just completely decided I was just going to take a long break and just get to be me again, get to find myself again. And so shortly thereafter, he shows up to the party, and he walks in with the Cheesecake Factory. It's a restaurant here in Texas, and the minute he walked in with such confidence, and he was just so excited to bring us this cake. And so immediately I was attracted to him just by his confidence, the way he carried himself. I just immediately was tuned in. So we're sitting there having dinner. We introduce, he gets introduced to everyone, comes around and, says hello to me. I could totally tell when he shook my hand, I felt this energy that was just a lightning bolt feeling. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that was shocking. And so that was that. As the night progresses, my friend says, where did Sal go? And so we're all looking for Sal, and Sal is nowhere to be found. And so we look outside, his car's gone. She calls him, and he's apparently left the party, didn't tell anyone he was leaving. And that was that. I remember sitting at the dining table thinking, oh gosh, he's gone. I really wanted to get to know him better. Like I wanted to impress him. Darn it, he's gone. Oh, well, you win some, you lose some kind of thing. And so he left, the night went on and the party was over. I said goodbye to everyone. About a week later, I get a text from my friend's sister, which that night we were at her house. And so she says, she sends me a message via Facebook and she says, hey, she says, Sal reached out to me today and wanted to get your number. And she says, he asked me about you and I just wanted to make sure it was okay for me to give him your number. And I said, yeah, that's fine. She goes, well, here's his number in case you want to text him. And so I was like, oh, I'm just so old fashioned and I'm just like not the one to be the chaser. And so I was like, I don't know if I'll reach out to him. If he's interested, he'll, just kind of reach out to me. And I wasn't ready at that time. I mean, I knew that I felt that initial energy between us, but I don't think I had closed the past relationship to be able to move on to another. So, sure enough, she gave him my number, and within minutes after that, he began texting. And so we began just kind of getting to know each other via texting. He was a military man. He kind of checked off all the boxes, like actually every single box almost that I had. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but at the age of 47, you have these boxes, right? You want to trade up, not trade down. And so I kind of in my mind had already sorted, what I wanted and what I didn't want. So
and what are those wants?
Pretty much someone stable, someone who had, a career, who was intelligent, who was articulate, chivalry was huge for me. Like I said, I'm old fashioned. I grew up with 4 brothers, and even though they were narcissistic and still are, they were very, chivalrous to me. I mean, I was the girl and I was spoiled and, they did these things for me. And so I just kind of grew up, being treated that way. So chivalry was important. I wanted a person that was sociable, that could just, because I'm very social. And, I have friends from all walks of life, all colors, sizes, and shapes. And I want someone that's going to, fit into my life. And so I noticed with him initially that day when I met him, he was very social at the party. And he was just like, hey, nice to meet you. Just so super confident. So anyway, he checked that off. He was just well-versed in life. He traveled. He served in the military for 20-something years. And so to me, I associated his years of service with, automatically assumed that he was a man of his word. That was important. Remember, I'm a Hispanic household, a man of his word, and that he was loyal and that he was truthful, because, being an officer, or not an officer, he was a chief in the Navy. You are expected to have, to be these things. And, in the Navy's coat of arms, I think it's, loyalty and all those things. And I thought, okay, well, he's been in the Navy 20-something years. He's all these things and then some. So I was like, perfect. So, anyway, so like I said, we started getting to know each other and via texting. And so, I know this sounds kind of strange, but one of the things I always asked, was if, it's just being silly, I guess, through conversation, is, do you have a pocket knife in your pocket. And that's important to me. A man who carries a pocket knife, I don't know. It's just my own thing. It sounds kind of silly, but if you carry a pocket knife, I know that you are a utilitarian, right? And so he did. He carried a pocket knife, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So we go on and conversing and everything, and he's like, hey, I really want to come out to your house. Let's do dinner. Because I lived kind of outside of San Antonio. So he says, let me drive out to you. And he's like, have you cooked dinner? And I said, no, I haven't cooked dinner. My daughter is not home yet. And he's like, well, you know what? Let me bring you guys some food. And I was like, oh my gosh. In the past relationships I've had, I've never allowed them to come to my home just because that was my daughter and it was our home. It was hers and my safe zone, if you will. The previous man I had dated, I dated him for 3 years and he had only come to my house counted a few times. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. But there was just such a connection with him that I was like, you know what? My daughter's just going to have to get used to the fact that I'm, looking for my partner and that I want to be happy and have a companion in my life. And you know what? She's getting older. She's engaged now. She knows that, mom's going to have to move on. She's moving out and, mom has to now establish her life. And so I told my daughter, I said, he's coming over, he's bringing over pizza. And she says, okay, it'll be interesting to meet him. So sure enough, he shows up and he has everything, the pizza, dessert, everything that we could possibly think of. He has this spread for it. And keep in mind, I had just met him 2 days prior. So he comes, we have a good time. My daughter and my son and at that time, it was her fiance, met him. And so, he came in and when he introduced himself, he just kind of introduced himself as a, hi, I'm, Chief Sal. And my son-in-law, who is also Navy, CB, was, impressed, obviously, because he was in higher ranks within the military. So all night long during dinner, he kept emphasizing how he liked to be referred to as chief. And so my son-in-law kind of was, even though my son-in-law was in his early 20s, he's an old soul. So is my daughter. And so they're very, very mature for their age. And actually, sometimes they can be somewhat of a parent to me rather than the other way around, just because they're just so solid in who they are. And so anyway, my son-in-law right away just kind of, I could tell just by their body language that they were just not having that connection with him. But I sure was. So I was smitten. I was highly impressed with the fact that he wanted to impress my kids. And I refer to my kids as my daughter and my son-in-law because I only have one child. So I was highly impressed that because that was important to me. It was important to me that this person that I was looking for to be a grandfather one day, to be that stepdad, even though my kids are grown, still to have that type of influence in their lives was important to me, not only for myself or my personal check boxes, but also to be that person. And so I was trying really hard to make that whole situation work to where they clicked on the first meet. So I could tell by their body language they didn't. So I kind of was trying to finish up the night. And I said, okay, well, so I walked him outside and I thought it was so funny because I didn't know what kind of car he drove. And he drove this fancy Camaro and his license plate was personalized and it said cruisin'. And I found that funny because he was 50 and cruising, I thought, okay, well, that's kind of odd. But, everyone has their little quirks, whatever. So he left and...
So I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Here, just kind of at the beginning, this guy's clicking all of your boxes.
Yes.
And you have this rule about the meeting your family and, having someone over. You break that rule. You're not aware that you're aware that you broke the rule, but you're not aware that maybe that wasn't a great idea. And now you have this guy who wants to be called chief. Your kids have a weird feeling about him. Don't say anything, but you can tell. And now you have this license plate. A guy in his 50s with a license plate that says cruisin'. And he also wants to be called chief. And right there you have, you're passing it off as, and rightly so, because we have no idea that this is happening. But you're passing it off as, he's a person. He has multiple types of things that could be going on as far as his personality. He could be, he's a guy who is sociable. So in a weird way, it's not strange, but at the same time, it is strange because it is a contradiction of both personalities.
Yes.
A guy that wants to be called chief, but at the same time has a license plate that says cruisin'. It's not, right there. It's an odd thing. It's an odd thing.
It was so odd. Keep in mind the relationship I had just gotten out of, as I mentioned earlier, I hadn't even allowed him to come to my house. Keep in mind, I was with him for 3 years, and him and my daughter had developed an unbelievable relationship there towards the end. But I could tell in that relationship, it was going to get to where he would be physically abusive. And I decided to walk out when I did. And, at that moment, after I left that relationship, there was so many things that I did wrong, that we both did wrong. But I thought, any new relationship, I'm going to handle it completely different. Like my past relationship, he didn't get to meet my daughter until after a year that we had been dating. And that was one of the big things that he struggled with. And I decided, with moving forward, my next relationship, no, it's going to be very important that my kids meet him right away, that and so I just, because you don't know how to navigate, right? Personalities are so different, that I just knew that I was going to have to do things differently. And so I did. And whether it was, my gut was telling me don't, like he was pushing me to come over that one night, and I had my hair in a bun and I didn't even have any makeup on, and I was just not ready for him to come over, but he kept insisting, and I was like, okay, fine, come on over. And so, so yes, the license plate, he takes off and he kind of peels out of my driveway with his cruising license plate. So, as he's leaving, he's calling me and just kind of, how wonderful my kids are and how my home is just absolutely perfect, and how he noticed that, my home was a home, that it was, lived in, and that my stove was used, that I cook and I'm that mother. And, I just all the things that he's looking for. And so I was super excited. Oh my God, this guy likes me. He's perfect. I absolutely was just enthralled in his conversation, his life experiences. I mean, he was just laying it on thick. Keep in mind, he was trying to impress my kids as well as trying to impress me. So he leaves. He continues to then, the next day, it's the constant good morning, all these things. And then he says to me, hey, do you like football? Honestly, do I like football? No, I like the social part of football, where I gather with my friends and cook for them and, do the whole food spread. I love that piece of football. But do I know the game? Absolutely not. I haven't been able to understand it my whole life. I mean, I'm not going to start to understand it now. And so he says, hey, I really want to go watch a Dallas Cowboy game. And I was like, oh my God, I heard the field is amazing. Is it field? No, the stadium. He says, I said, I hear the stadium's amazing. He's like, you want to go to a Dallas game? And I was like, absolutely. So because he worked for an airline, he was able to travel for free. And because he traveled for free, he was able to get all these points at these hotels and, just resorts, things like that. So he says, we can book a flight. We'll go to Dallas and we'll stay in a hotel and we'll just make a weekend out of it. Oh my God. I was thrilled. I was like, oh my God, he loves to travel. He has this ability to just get up and go and do all this. Keep in mind, I'm able to too, because I'm single. Obviously, my daughter's older. She's getting married. I don't have anybody to answer to anymore. So I'm like, okay, this even sounds even more enticing. Like, oh my God, this is my dreams coming true. I'm thanking God, thank you so much for bringing this man into my life. Like, I could see that we're going to, connect. So I said, okay, well, let's go. He says, you know what? What's your address? He's like, I'm FedExing the cowboy tickets to you now, to your office. And he's like, wait for them. They should arrive tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. Sure enough, the tickets arrive at my office and I'm super excited. Everyone's wondering what's going on. I'm telling all my office mates, oh my God, I've met this guy. And guess what? We're flying to Dallas and we're going to go watch a Dallas Cowboy game. So the game comes and we fly out there. It was magical. We danced in the streets. We watched a game. He was a chivalrous beyond what I could ever even imagine. And keep in mind, this was probably a week after we had met each other. And I was just so unsure because I knew what that entailed, staying in a hotel, doing all those things. And I told him I wasn't ready for any of that. I made him, understand that I wanted a room with 2 beds and I was going to sleep in my own bed and, just kind of try to set my boundaries. Well, went to Dallas, did our thing, had the most amazing time. So we get back and he then begins to continue to love bomb me, just how amazing I am, how beautiful I am, how I'm just a complete package, and how I'm everything that he's been looking for. And I'm just like feeling ecstatic about it. I'm just like, wow, like I'm that good, So he says to me, because I'm a good cook, I'm trying to now impress him. They always say, right, impress a man through his stomach. And well, that's what we Latinas believe anyway. So then I began to just cook these meals, and I would drive them to his place of employment and just have dinner with him in the car. And so this was now the second weekend. And so I started doing that pretty much not every day, but every other day. And I was taking him meals and because I was trying to impress him too. And so one day he says, hey, I have to work tomorrow, but I want you to, he takes out his wallet from his pocket. And keep in mind, I'm very independent. I have been raised to be this, just do for myself, work hard, play hard, but never ask anybody for anything. That's just how my mom raised me. So even when I was married, I was still, it was whatever I needed to do what needed to be done. I did it for my family. And so I never relied on anybody for anything my whole life. And so I'm still this person. And he says, I'm working tomorrow, but I really want to give you something. And I said, okay. And so he takes out his wallet and he hands me $200. And he says, I want you to go shopping. Like, you've been doing all this stuff and you've been bringing me meals, and I just want you to spoil yourself for once. And I was like, okay. So As we're getting to know each other, I realized, I asked him, I said, how long have you been divorced? Well, I've been divorced a year. So where do you live? Where are you staying? And he's like, well, I'm staying with a wounded warrior. I kind of met this guy through a wounded warrior support group, and he lived alone. So I asked if maybe he needed a roommate because I just had nowhere to stay. And he said, so he took me in, and I was like, oh, okay. So you're paying rent? And he's like, yeah, I'm paying him rent. And I was like, okay, well, that works for you. So I kept noticing that I would see him in the same outfits over and over again, just he kind of alternated between, 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants. And I was like, okay. So I guess his wife, and this is kind of what he made me believe, that his wife had kind of just told him to leave. And so,
so just to clarify for everyone here, he has the car that says cruising. He's able to travel easily, and has all these points because of he working for an airline. So there's this kind of life of luxury. But the opposite side is that he is living with another person, another man. He has a roommate. And, you are also noticing that he doesn't have that many clothes. And you're chalking it up to that he had to leave his household quickly because of his divorce. So one side of him is spending money and looking like he has a lot of money, and then this other side is showing that he doesn't. And you're convinced that he does, or he at least truthful about it because of the circumstance he's told you.
Yes. Yes. So yes to all those things. And so I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. How could she have just kicked him out? He's worked his whole life. He's a military man. He's, done so many tours, and how could she be so cruel? Anyway, so I'm assuming all these things because of the stories that he's been feeding me. So, anyway, so he gives me the $200, and he says, I get off at 11 tonight. So, is it okay for me to come over after I get off work? I said, sure, call me, let me know. And I'll let you know how my day went, and we'll plan it from there. So I go to the mall, and because I am a very giving person, this has just been me my whole life. I've always been a giver. I've always been, the lifeline for everyone. If someone needs something, I'm the person to call. I'm the person to calm the situation, just kind of to be that shock absorber for everyone. That's been my role my whole life. So I grab the money, and I'm just like, okay. So I go to the mall, and I start shopping for him. I buy him pants, I buy him shirts, I buy him socks and underwear. And I'm thinking, just he deserves to look nice. He has an important job at where he works, and he can't be wearing the same outfit over and over again. So that night he comes over, and I was like, hey, I've got a surprise for you. I'm so excited that you're here. And oh my God, look what I bought you. And I got you these pants, try them on. And so he's having this fashion show for me. And because I'm wanting him to feel good, he served our country for 20 years. I'm doing my part and appreciating what he's done and all these things. And he's like super ecstatic that I had bought all these things for him. And he says, you just passed the test. And I was like, oh, there was a test? And he was like, yeah, I wanted to see what you were going to do with that money. I wanted to see if you were going to spend it on yourself or what you were going to do with it. And I said, well, that's just not who I am. I mean, I make my own money. I don't need your money for anything. So I can buy my own things. I have my whole life. And so I surely don't expect you to come in and do that for me. I don't need you to come in and save me. So then that happened. And so obviously the love bombing continues. He then begins to adorn me with all this Navy stuff, like I was some prize of, a lapel and a lanyard and, a Navy hat and a Navy shirt and, just everything. He wanted everyone around me to know that he was, kind of labeling me, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but so I was being supportive. It's whatever made him happy. I was going to be his biggest cheerleader, and that he was never going to feel less of a man or less of a person when he was around me, because I've always been that uplifter. I'm always the one to say, you got this, you can do this, baby, you got it, whatever, I'm there, right there for you, whatever it takes. So he picked up on that right away, and he knew that I was going to go whichever direction that he went. Keep in mind, I had felt the most comfortable with him. I felt like I was for once in a relationship where I was going to be able to be me and have the discussions and have a voice to be able to disagree, to agree to disagree, and just be able to have those healthy discussions that I felt like I never did. I mean, that relation, it just was so easy. And I had never felt that before. So, when you talk about that line, what's the term that you use? Hook, line, and sinker. Mm-hmm. Was because we were able to have those discussions and disagree and agree and then also be on the same, have the same mindset. But the hook, line, and sinker was, 3 weeks into our relationship, he says, my mom passed away many years ago, and she always wished for a woman like you in my life. And I'm so sad that she'll never get to meet you. And he says, I'd like for us to go to her gravesite if you're okay with that. And I said, oh, absolutely. Whatever you need, I'll be there. And he's like, she's been weighing very heavily on me. And I just, I want to take you. And I said, absolutely. We go to the cemetery. He gets on one knee and he's crying at the gravesite. And I'm feeling horribly bad because I still have my mother. I'm blessed to still have my mom. And my heart went out to him, and I was just, rubbing and trying to comfort him, and it's okay. And, I wish I would have done that. And I wish I would have done this for my mom, and on and on and on. And so he's again on one knee, and he's telling his mom how, he's thanking her for bringing me into his life, and how he's just so grateful. And that he knows that she did this, that it's because of her that I have now come into his life. And so I'm just like, oh my God, he's talking to his mom about me. And yes, it must be, a blessing from heaven that here we are meeting each other, and this is perfect. And so we do our thing there. We get up, move on. And so then, because I visit my mom on a weekly basis, my mom lives about 45 minutes from where I live. And so I try to, do weekly visits, kind of an all-day visit with my mom. And I said to him, what the irony was that we grew up on the same side of town. And so his mom was buried in a cemetery that's really close by my mother's house. So we made it a pact that every time we would go visit my mom, we would stop by and visit his mom. And because it wasn't fair that I would go spend, the day with my mom and he couldn't. So, he says, so I said, well, we'll stop by, have a little, we'll take our chairs and sit and chit chat with mom. So then we decided it was an ideal of mine, and that we take a little box and we buried it by her headstone. And we would write her messages and, stick them in this little box by her headstone. And so every time, if he needed to go there and, vent about something or ask for something or tell her a story, that he could write it down, kind of like a journal type. And we would just stick it in that box there. So we did that. He bought all the little utensils, and we dug out the little hole by the cemetery. And so then we began to practice that little ritual. And so I thought, it just strengthens us. It strengthens our relationship, his relationship with his mom, because he was feeling very guilty that he was gone for so long while he was in the military. And so I thought, okay, this is healing for him. So moving forward, I'm like, okay, I'm in love with this man. Like, I could totally feel like the feelings I was feeling were just intensifying. Keep in mind, 3 days in, he was already telling me that he loved me. We had stopped by at a gas station one day, and we're pumping gas, and he opens the car door and he gets on one knee and he professes his love to me. And this is probably 5 days in. And I thought, okay, this is really odd. And my gut right there, red flag, but I was just enamored with him that I just ignored those red flags.
So 3 weeks in here, everything has moved super fast. You've already been told that, he loves you. You've already gone on a vacation with him.
Yes.
Stayed in the same hotel room as him, even though nothing happened. And he's already, introduced you to his mother, even though she's passed away. And one of the most grand gestures you can think of, to seal the deal with you right here. I mean, that is pretty, I don't know what happens in the rest of the story, but it's pretty elaborate kind of there. And, the red flags that might be there, you've noticed a couple weird things, but everything else is so powerful, you're giving the benefit of the doubt in the situation. And, now you are, really at this point, anything can happen. You're in.
Yes, I'm feeling it. I am feeling it. And it's everything I've ever dreamed of. Everything. But to just kind of go rewind a little bit. No, my boundaries weren't respected at our first trip, but I really don't want to go into that detail, because if my daughter or my son-in-law ever listen to this, I don't want to get into that. But okay. So no, those they weren't respected.
And he's also a victim player as well in this beginning part, but that you also don't really notice that that's what's going on. No, because I'm just blinded by all this, Chad. Like I said, I'm enamored, because this is the life that I could foresee traveling. Oh my gosh, he works for an airline. I'm going to have a bag ready just ready to just get up and go whenever he says so. And this is everything I've just ever wanted. But anyway, so yes, that happens. And so I'm like, okay, hook, line, and sinker. He's introduced me to his mom. In this way, and which is to us, that is a sacred, right? This is a sacred thing. You take someone to a grave site with you, to your parents' grave site. It's huge. So I'm like, okay, I'm in. So at this point, I'm like, okay, my social life is still going on. My friends want to meet him, because everyone just sees I'm so happy. I'm like different. I'm smiling again. I am just so happy. And I'm like, okay. So my friends say, hey, I have a friend that's a male. He's been my friend for a platonic male who's been my friend for, almost 30 years. And he's been my counselor all these years. And so I owe him tons of money, right? But he never collects. But he says, hey, I need to meet this guy. I'm like, okay. So
we make a breakfast date. My friend comes, brings his wife, and we have a breakfast meet and greet. He was perfect. Oh my God. They shook hands. They, pretty much chest bumped because they were both Dallas Cowboy fans. Sal had his best, he was just humorous and charming beyond what you could think. I mean, beyond. And my friends, this particular set of friends was just loved him. He sealed the deal with them when he gets up and goes and pays for the whole bill. And he's like, my friend was like, love the guy. He's a keeper. So we get that one out of the way. And he gives me a stamp of approval. Of course, we were there for an hour. Sal, put on his best suit and, they loved him. So, I do have a very, like I said, social life. So I get together with my girlfriends at least, at this time, twice a month. This was before COVID. Twice a month, we do wine, we do plays, we go, just all over the place. And so we had already bought some tickets to go to this play. And so I mentioned to him, I was not going to see him that night because I was getting together with my girlfriends. So he says, what are you girls doing after? And I said, well, one of my friends is married. And I said, well, he's dropping us off at the play. And of course, he's picking us up because he knows we like to drink. And so he always makes sure that we get dropped off and picked up. And he says, well, I don't mind, dropping off and picking up. You just let me know what you need. And I'm thinking, another checkbox. Yay. He's going to be there at my beck and call when I do these nights out with my girls. I mean, that's all I've ever wanted, is to have that kind of support system. So anyway, the girls are like, no, we already have this planned. We're just going to meet at, Letty's house. We're just going to meet at Letty's house, and he could just come over then. And sure enough, I mean, he was there waiting for us in the parking lot when we got back after the play. And I knew that when he walked in, of course, he introduces himself and he says, I've been in the military 20 years and I'm, a Navy chief, blah, blah, blah. And this is how he introduces himself to the whole crowd. And there was about 15 of us in the home. And my friend's husband had always prepared meals for us so that when we got home, we always had something to eat because we had the munchies or whatever. And so, of course, then he comes out and meets him and they shake hands. And again, he introduces himself as, being in the military for 20 years and he's a chief and da-da-da. And so I knew, because I know these people, they've been in my life for so long, I can always tell, their body language. So I knew right then and there that he rubbed my friend Letty's husband the wrong way. Like I knew. And it was so important to me that they get along because these are my friends that I hang out with pretty much, every other weekend, or our families have been in each other's lives for 30 years. And it was important that they like my guy. And so, and when he came in that way, I knew. And then I thought, Mike is an alpha male. Sal is an alpha male, beyond. And I thought these two alpha males are just not going to get along. So sure enough, I could tell the total disconnect from my friend's husband. And I felt very uncomfortable because I could just feel it. No one was comfortable anymore at this point because Sal just made everybody feel uneasy with just his presence, I guess. And so I was like, okay, well, let's go. So we ended up leaving. So after that, he then began to whisk me away. So obviously I didn't have the stamp of approval from them, but because they loved me, they accepted it. They knew that I was happy and they would see us traveling. I mean, we went to San Diego. He took me all over San Diego. I mean, it was the most glorious trip, to every single beach in San Diego. He, drew a heart in the sand with "I love you" in the center. It was, he took me to dinner, and we sat at a rooftop bar and just enjoyed this amazing view. Now there was a lot of financial exploitation going on, because I'm, able to pay for a lot of things on my own. I really didn't need him to, but I was also the believer of, we can go Dutch, or you pay one time, I pay the next, or, but I found myself picking up the tab on a lot of those things. So, even though they were extravagant things, or things to do, I found myself, reaching for the wallet when the bill came. So, I guess he felt because I got to fly there for free and got to stay there for free at the hotel that I needed to pick up, on all the tabs. And for a while there, I was like, okay, well, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. I'm getting here for free. I'm doing this and because of all his, perks, I guess. So, on that trip to San Diego, he says, hey, ship so-and-so is on dock. He says, let me go out there and see if we can get a tour on the ship. So we walk up to the entrance. And he introduces himself. I'm Chief Sal, blah, 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 blah. And, oh, yes, Chief. And he's like, I'd like to see if I can get a personal tour. Is the captain on here? Blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind, this is a month in. We've already taken 2 trips. A month in San Diego, and the trip of my life. I had never been. And now we're here at in front of this humongous, ship, Navy ship. And he is getting us a personal tour on this ship. So we get, 2 of the young, I don't know, enlistees. I don't know what you call them. And sure enough, we get a tour. I have pictures, glorious pictures of us being on this ship where on the helipad, and we're watching the sunset, and he's expressing his love to me, how much he just absolutely loves me. And this is just perfect. And I'm just thinking how dreamy this is. So we go on, and the trip ends. We come back. We keep getting invited to some of the other outings with friends, and he's just not getting along with the guys at all. No one likes him. He picks up on that. So the next time we get invited, he says, well, you know what? I'm going to take some liquor. His brother worked at a liquor store, so he constantly got free liquor bottles. So he started bringing the guys liquor bottles. So then he started kind of warming up to the guys. Hey, and you bring liquor? Hey, anybody loves you, right? So he kind of started trying to, trick them, manipulating them into liking him. So then, he starts getting a little bit more accepted. As this continues to go on, he's meeting me for lunch every day. He's a big, big, big eater. I'm picking up the tabs pretty much every day at lunch. He starts spending the night more often at my house. I'm feeling a little bit uneasy, but he kind of just pushes himself on us. My daughter's uneasy. My son-in-law's a bit uneasy, but I continue to just, say, hey, you know what? You guys are getting married. I'm a grown woman. Let me live my life. Like, I need to start, just living my life and moving on. And so, again, the trips continue. So on one occasion, he says to me, I'm going to have to fly to Dallas because they want to do an article on me. Hispanic magazine wants to do an article on me because it was Veterans Day was coming along, and they wanted to do an article. So I said, okay. He says, so I'm going to go ahead and leave my car at my friend's apartment, and and I'll be there. I'm going to fly down, and then I'll do the interview, and then I'll fly back, and I'll be in touch. And I said, okay, sounds good. So he went, did his interview. He sent me pictures of himself in his uniform and them doing the interview. And he says, they chose me, and, they sought me out. Come to find out later, no, he was the one reaching out to them saying, hey, here's my story. I would be a good candidate for you to publicize my story in your magazine. But anyway, so he goes and he calls me and says to me, hey, I'm back in town. He says, but something horrible has happened. And I was like, what's happened? And he says, well, my car's been stolen. And I was like, what? And he says, yeah, I left it at the apartment, and all of it, it's just gone. And so we're assuming it's stolen. I was like, well, are you sure? I said, was it repoed? Have you been making your payments? I mean, I just, started asking all these questions, and I was like, well, whatever. I said, I'm coming to get you. And so, I go get him, and so I'm feeling really bad, because now he doesn't have a vehicle, and I happen to have two cars. So he says, well, what am I going to do? Like, I live over here, and I don't know how to get around. And so I said, well, you know what? Don't worry about his cell. You can borrow one of my vehicles. And because I do home health, I work with the geriatric population. I travel a lot. So I have a little beat up car that, I just add my miles to, and I have my luxury car that I take out on weekends. And I said, well, you can take my little home health car. I said, it's good on gas and everything, and for all the miles that you drive, back and forth to work. And he was like, no, how about if I just use your other car? And I was like, okay, yeah, you know what? That's fine. Go ahead and take it. So he comes down for lunch the next day, and we're sitting at the restaurant, and he's like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's just giving me sob story after sob story. And he says to me, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get another car because, my credit's not all that good, because of my divorce and everything. And let me backtrack a little bit. Before that, he was already futurizing, just saying, how he could see, our lives together, and how I could be his wife, and how we could just be so happily married forever. And so he had already put it in my my psyche, I guess, that this was going to happen in the near future. So as we're sitting here at lunch and we're discussing this car problem, I start thinking, well, you know what? We're eventually going to end up getting married. He's going to be my husband. And I'm thinking all of this in my head. I'm just going to help him. Like, I'll go and finance the vehicle for him. So I said, you know what? I said, let me help you. I said, let's go to the dealerships and start looking for a vehicle for you. And, I'll just, take it out on under my name, and then you just make the payments. I said, are you able to do that? And he was like, yeah, he's like, let me figure out what my insurance is going to do. But yeah, that would be great if I could do that. If you could do that for me. Yes, I'll sign whatever you want me to. We can, do a contract, whatever whatever you need. And I was like, no, we don't need to do that. I have your word, right? Because remember, the word is important to me. So it's like, you have my word. I'll make the payments. I'll be the one responsible. So we start going to dealerships, and I said, you know what? I want you to keep it within, $12,000 to $15,000, not more than that. And so we start looking around, and he starts looking at these highly expensive vehicles. And it's like, well, I was thinking if I buy one of these, it'll probably break down. It won't last me for long. And so I was just thinking, why don't we just, get a newer vehicle? And I promise that, I'll pay for it. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll do that. So sure enough, I go to the bank, I get a cashier's check for $42,000. I said, whatever it is that you need, we'll get it done. And keep in mind, I'm way smarter than this. I know better. Like, I am, but what I realized listening to your podcast is it's not about being smart. right? It's not about whether you know better or it's not about your intelligence. It's about just how they manipulate you to believe that, you know, they're going to give you the life that you've been wanting your whole life. So
you have been set up here very well.
Yes.
And at the beginning, there were red flags. At the beginning, you know, boundaries were crossed, and, you know, he tested boundaries. Even his test, he even said it out loud. This was a test to see what you would do when he gave you that money. He's been showing you one thing where in reality, I don't know the extent of it yet, or we all don't know, only you do right now, of really his real situation. And, you know, you have bought into this future that he's now promising you. He's everything on paper. He is $1 million. You know, he's in reality, you know, he is up there. You know, the biggest red flags are your friends and your child and your child's husband who were repelled by him. And you know, they're happy for you, but you know, you're being set up pretty good here. And now here is a move you're making that, you know, we're what, 2 months in?
Yes.
2 months in. So I was going to ask you this question, you know, besides the future, you know, that you're being given, how much is guilt playing into this move?
Guilt as far as
you know, feeling, you know, his victim playing, like you're feeling bad about like where he is, his wife, he's in the situation, you know, I don't want the car to break down on me. You feel guilty. Oh, this car might break down on him.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
like he's really needling in on, you know, you offered an inch. He just asked for a mile.
Yes, absolutely. And
you know what I mean?
And here is...
And it's the guilt, I think, that might be driving it. So I'm asking you.
Yes. And here's my way of appreciating someone who has given his life for his country. This is me doing my civic duty of helping a disabled veteran, you know, a disabled retiree who, you know, has done so much for us, for me, for my family, because he's been out there serving. And the least I could do is help him a little, you know. What's $42,000? You know, obviously he had given me his word he was going to pay for it all. So I believed him because he was a man of service, and he was a man who stood for this code of honor, you know. And I had at that point, no reason to doubt him. My friend and her family had known him his whole life. Okay. How much more confirmation did I need that this was a decent human being? So this was me doing my civic duty, me giving back, and you know, why not? I was falling in love with him. He was going to give me the life that I so wanted, not financially, not materialistically, but fulfill me in ways that I had never felt fulfilled before, whether it be conversation, whether it be traveling, whether it be the chivalrous manners. I mean, I could tell you things that you'd just be shocked at what he did for me, and other girls would be jealous listening to my story. And so I was just, like I said, enamored by everything that he did. And so I've got like a little outline here that I'm kind of going by. So I'm sorry. So I did notice he struggled with insecurities a lot. And so because he had as a child suffered from polio, so he had a limp to his left leg, and his left leg was smaller than his right leg. So he had this limp. And I have scars from some surgeries. And that was another thing that bonded us, was that because I have so many body image issues, that he has body image issues, but he felt so free with me. And so therefore I felt free with him, because he was imperfect and so was I. Guess what? I have scars and you have a small leg. And we just bonded. That was another reason why it was like, I loved him with his, skinny leg and limp. I don't know if this sounds horribly bad, but, and he loved me with my scars. And so we, like I said, we bonded. And, so anyway, he suffered with insecurities. And so anywhere I went, he wanted to be there right with me. And so every year, because of my job, I take an annual, course in Houston, and it's an administrators conference that I go, to. And so, this was before the 4th of July. So all of this was before September. Okay. All of this that I've told you, the trips that we've taken, all of that was before September. So his, then comes August. I had a trip scheduled with my girlfriends to a winery in Fredericksburg.
One question, just one question before we just remember winery before Fredericton. Football season starts in September.
Yes.
So you went to see a preseason game?
It was a preseason game.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just because I'm going to get questions about it.
Yes. And if I don't, yes, it had to have been a preseason game, because I remember it was very soon after we started talking that he FedExed me some tickets.
Okay.
Yes. And so I promise you I'm not lying.
Oh, I know, but sometimes people send me emails, and then just so they don't send me emails, we'll just answer the question before it happens.
Yes. Good point. Good catch. And so, anyway, so then what happened? Oh, so this was before his birthday. Yes, as I recall, because I'm going to Fredericksburg with my girlfriends, and I'm like, I'm going to be gone the whole day, but we'll be in touch. I'll text you. He says, well, before you go out, I'd really like to get to see you and give you a hug and a kiss and just wish you well. I was like, well, we're at the HEB out here by blah, blah, blah. If you want to come, we're here. And so picking up some things, last minute things. So he shows up in the parking lot, and I'm like, oh my God, he really does love me. Like, he wants to see me. How sweet is this? He wants to, just wish me well. And so he does. He shows up, meets my other girlfriends. They don't really get a good vibe from him either. And of course, the whole trip, they're talking to me about this. And I'm just like, you guys don't know, like, all the stuff he does behind closed doors, the things that he says, like, give him a chance. Like, I know he comes across a little rough, or a little, what's the word? Conceited, I guess, is, for lack of a better word, full of himself, I guess. Because at that time, I really wasn't familiar with the word narcissist. That term, I wasn't familiar with it at all. And so I was like, just give him a chance. Cause I'm that person who gives people 10, 15, 20 different chances my whole life. So I was like, just give him a break. So we go to Fredericksburg, do our thing. And so come back, check in with him. Hey, I'm back. We had a great time. And then he ghosts me. He disappears. I text him. He doesn't respond. I'm not a seeker at all. I was just dumbfounded. How? This was going perfectly. Like, all of this was everything. We had just gone to San Diego. We had done this, and it was just, dreaming. Everything that we've been through. We've danced on the streets, with the moonlight. And what happened? Like, oh my God, I must have really upset him. So after two texts that I sent him and one phone call, he never responded. I just was like, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm not going to be, seeking him out. It's over. Heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. I'm like, well, it's better now than later. Right. So then keep in mind, we still hadn't, bought the truck yet, because we were still kind of in the talks about it. And so we hadn't really made that purchase yet. So his birthday was in September. So right before his birthday, he reaches out to me and he says to me, I was like, oh my gosh, you're back. Where did you go? Like, where have you been? And he was like, well, you know, my son and my son was having a really hard time with me moving on. And I finally had a discussion with my son, because my son asked me, well, what do you want for your birthday, Dad? And he said, well, I just want to be happy, son. And he said, okay, Dad, be happy. And he says, well, I met this woman and I really like her. And he was like, and then his son pretty much gave him the blessing. So he's like, I really want to pursue this. You know, you're wonderful and blah, blah, blah. And so then I forgave him and I gave him another chance. So soon thereafter, like as soon as all of that happened, he slowly started moving in. And as soon as we reconciled after that ghosting period, soon thereafter, we went and bought his $42,000 truck. And he was super excited. And so he was, driving around in his new fancy truck and letting his son drive and just showing off and showing off to my friends. And so approaching came the holidays, and so there was still some more traveling going on that we were doing. We had gone to Tennessee because he loved to gamble. We had gone to Colorado. Again, just these trips of a lifetime. Keep in mind, I had always been when I was married, we really didn't do a lot of traveling. And so I was just being introduced to traveling through him. And so we did more traveling. And so on one occasion, my brother says to me, hey, I really like to meet this guy. Like, I hear so much about him. And I said, you know what? It's a good idea. Let me get the family together. You guys need to come and, have dinner. Let's, meet him. So I organize a dinner with my family and him and my kids. They come over, and my brother's pretty harsh. Like, he's going to just come out and just say how it is. And so he met him, and he says, so what are your intentions with my sister? And he was like, your sister's amazing. And, just saying all these wonderful things about me. And, I could see us, forming a future together and eventually getting married. And so my brother then was like, okay, I like the answers to all of that. So we sit down for dinner, and everyone's talking, and he brings out this coin bag full of coins. And I guess everywhere he's traveled, he's collected these Navy coins, I guess. It's not money. It's just some type of coins. I don't know what they're called. So he starts telling us each story about how he acquired these coins. Now, my brother's kind of like me. We believe in people. We trust people. This particular brother is kind of like my soul sibling. So him and I are very, very similar. And so him and I are just sitting at the table, just listening to these stories and just taken aback by, wow, these stories that this man has, right? So my daughter and my son-in-law are sitting there, and I could see my son-in-law looking at my daughter and rolling his eyes like, oh my gosh, whatever. So dinner's about to be done. And then he says, and I saved the best story for last. He says, I got to ride back. He says, well, y'all know when Bin Laden was killed? He said, I was on that boat that brought him back to the United States. And so my son-in-law looks at me, and I'm just like, oh my God, Sal, that is, who has the opportunity to have that experience? Like, how does this happen? And so then my brother is just like even more, just involved in the conversation, and is just super impressed by this story. So that was the end of the night. And I was like, well, that's the icing on the cake. Wow. Thank you so much for your service. I'm praising him. My brother's praising him. My daughter and my son-in-law are like, no way, no how. My son-in-law refused to ever refer to him as chief, even though, because he was Navy, you tend to respect the officers, but my son-in-law refused to do that. So, that was basically through the holidays. So we got to then our relationship continues to flourish. And that particular December, he pretty much moves in without being asked to move in. He brings his one trash bag of clothes that I had bought him and of whatever he had left, and pretty much moved in. My daughter was super uncomfortable. Her and her fiance already had a place. So my daughter ended up staying more frequently over at her fiance's house because she was just so uncomfortable that he was here. And I've always put my daughter first. Her whole life, I have put her first in every aspect of any decision I've ever made. But with him, I was not putting her first. So I allowed him to swindle his way in. So she ends up moving out. She's not upset with me or anything. She does have a sit down with me and says, Mom, I understand you need to move on with your life, and I just need to accept it. So I'm going to let you, do your thing, and I'm going to go ahead and just move out. And so she did, and I was okay with it. Otherwise, I would have been devastated if he wouldn't have been there. I would have been devastated my daughter was leaving. Oh, my God. But because I had this companionship now, I was, okay with it. So where I started noticing even more things that were coming that were just red flashing lights, was we went to, because like I said, I have a variety of friends constantly getting invited to different occasions. We got invited to a bar, and we went and had a wonderful time. A lot of his coworkers were there. And I invited one of my girlfriends with her boyfriend to come with me because I didn't know any of the people there. Of course, I'd make friends with anybody. My mom always says I can make, a dead person talk. So I didn't feel uncomfortable being there with people I didn't know, but I invited my friends. Well, he disappeared while we were there at the bar. And keep in mind, I was surrounded by nothing but his coworkers. And I'm like, where did he go? And so I'm asking my girlfriend, did you see where he went? And she's like, I think I saw him go outside. So I reach over and I see him come back in, and he comes back in, and he goes off and starts telling my friend Sandra and her boyfriend how he just wakes up every day to just tries to figure out how he's just going to put a smile on my face. That is his goal every single day when he wakes up, is how am I going to make Alma smile? Like, how am I going to do this? And so, of course, I'm looking at my friend Sandra and her boyfriend, and he's rolling his eyes like, really, dude? Like, how fake is this? Like, this doesn't even sound real. So he noticed, obviously, that disconnect, and he then gets up again and walks outside. Again, I noticed he's gone for another 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go find him. So I go around, and he is like, you can just picture this. He's sitting outside with one of his legs on top of the table and, just his arms crossed. And he has one of the young ladies that he works with sitting on the chair where he's obviously towering over her, looking down at her. Keep in mind, he's 5'4", 5'5", not really tall, but he's sitting on the table, and and she is gazing at him. And so I glanced out, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? We're all in here. Like, why are you out here? And she's like, oh, he's just telling me his stories about, when he served and da-da-da-da-da. And so she's just, like I said, gazing over him, and she's much younger than we both are. So he's like, I'll be in just a minute. So at this point, I'm irritated. I'm not the jealous type at all. I'm the type of person that likes to be all inclusive, because I have this friendship with a male person, I know that there's relationships that can be had that, can be platonic. So I know all this. And so I'm like, okay, this just did not feel good to me. So at that point, right then and there, that occasion, I realized, okay, there's something wrong here. Like I felt it in my gut. Like so we leave the bar. I didn't really talk to him very much that night. He was very upset with me because I embarrassed him in front of people. And so on our way back, he was pretty much scolding me. I am, Chief Sal. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what he said, but that was just kind of his persona. He went into that, I'm Chief Sal, like I am a man of honor and a man of my word. Like, how could you even think that I'm flirting with anybody? So he leaves. 30 minutes later, he comes back and we hash it out. Obviously, he realized that, he had this truck. It was under my name. There was going to be, repercussions for this. So he comes back in. We work it out. We continue to then, mingle with our friends, whoever was at this point inviting us to come, because at this point, the invites were getting less and less and less. My kids really didn't want to hang out, but I begged my daughter to just please be a little bit more accepting. He's just different, but he's so good to me. Like, I'm happy. Can't you see, I'm living my best life. Like I'm traveling, and they would see my pictures on Facebook and all these experiences I was having. And my daughter was like, had a conversation with her fiance and said, we need to just be accepting, my mom's happy. So he says to me, he starts getting more serious, and he then says, I would really like to consider, getting married. And he's like, but, I don't have any money to buy you a ring. And I want you to have a bigger ring than what my ex-wife has. And I was like, okay. And he's like, so do you think that you can finance the ring for me and I'll just make the payments? And he's like, and so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I feel about this. We've already got this loan for the truck, and now you want me to finance this ring. And keep in mind, it was like, I was thinking, oh my God, that ring is for me. I'm going to get to keep it. If something goes wrong, I'll just keep the ring. So, I said, well, he says, well, I'd really like to talk to your daughter about this first. And so I was like, okay. So he says, I need to meet up with your daughter so we can have dinner and I can ask for your hand and have that discussion with her. And I said, okay, well, here's her number. You can text her and, y'all can make those arrangements. I said, but, he says, okay. He says, well, I want my brother to come over so we can have that discussion with my brother and his wife as well. And so I was like, okay. So they came over and they were outside barbecuing, him and his brother, and his sister-in-law and I were in the kitchen. And so she says, so everything's going good. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the happiest. She's like, I see y'all traveling all over the place. Y'all look really happy. Y'all look like y'all are just a match made in heaven. And I was just, agreeing with her about all this. And she says, so let me ask you a question. She says, did he ever get divorced? And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, did his divorce ever come through? And I was like, he told me he's been divorced for over a year. And she was like, I don't know. Maybe, I should just stay out of this. And I thought, oh my gosh, really? So the night continued. Of course, I didn't approach him then. We ate dinner with his brother and his sister-in-law. They left. I said, hey, your sister-in-law made a funny comment to me today. And it just kind of threw me for a loop. She asked me if your divorce had gone through. And he was like, yeah, it's gone through. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay, so when was it final? And so he couldn't really answer me. So I went to bed that night and I was just like feeling really uneasy with everything. And I was just like, oh my God, this just doesn't seem right. So the next morning, I asked him, I said, you know what, Sal, I'm not feeling comfortable with what's just transpired. Your sister-in-law, what she said, it's just left me very uneasy. I said, I want you to show me your divorce decree I want to see your divorce arrangement, your within regards to custody, within regards to all those things. I said, because if we're going to be getting married, I need to know where you stand financially, because, you know, my finances are good. Like, I'm stable. My credit is good. I'm super stable. And I just do not want to get myself into any type of situation without at least knowing about it. And he's like, okay, I'll get you the divorce decree. So days went on. He never showed up. He was deflecting. He was added me to his travel card and added me to, you know, Southwest Airlines, to where I could just travel anytime I wanted to. I didn't even need to be with him anymore. I could just walk up to the counter and say, my name is so-and-so, and I need a ticket. And so he was deflecting. And so then I forgot about it. And I said, okay, you know, he's making everything so easy for me. And I just, you know, did what he did. And so that was that. And so come to find out, months later, he was not divorced. He was still married. And he and I had been already living together for 6 months at this point. So then I mentioned to him that, oh my God, I've been living with a married man. This goes totally against everything everything that I am, my values, everything. I just can't believe you've done this to me. So then he calls for divorce.
Sorry, one question. I guess, you know, he's not divorced. What's his relationship like with his wife at that time?
So I would hear them. She would call on occasion because they had one son together, and he was 15 at the time. And I would call them. I mean, he would call. I never spoke with her ever. I did get to meet his son on one occasion, and so they would have discussions, very heavy discussions online. And so. Anyway, I was like, yeah, this is going on. So then he says to me, so he says, yes, so-and-so just called, and this is what's going on with my son. And so I disagree with her. And so I would kind of have those discussions with him about, you know, how to just work with her, and how I explained to him how me and my ex were parents first, and we were exes second. It was always about my daughter and making her priority and making her life stable. And it was not about him and her. It was about their son. So I was always doing that talking to, the giving of advice and all those things. And so he was just always bad-mouthing her, how she was just this woman in the devil in sheep's clothing is what he would call her. And
and how did you find out that they were still married?
Because so one morning he jumps out of bed, and I normally don't get up for work until about 7:30 because I don't go into almost 9. So he literally catapults out of bed, and he's like, oh my God, I have an appointment. And oh my God, I should have been there by blah, 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 blah. And so I'm helping him get dressed. I'm ironing his clothes really quick as he's jumping in the shower, and I'm getting him dressed. And I'm like, what's going on? What appointment do you have? Like, he's like, literally, this is how I'm speaking in that tone. Just what's going on? Like, this is kind of what we're doing, running around the house, trying to get him ready and out the door to go to this appointment. So come to find out later that was his divorce, his final divorce hearing. So how I found out that they were still married was when he did finally, because I then remembered, oh my God, you never brought me this paperwork. I need to see it. He brings me this divorce decree, and it was dated May the 12th, like days prior. And so I was like, hey, this divorce decree says that you were just divorced like days prior. And he was like, no, we had to go in there and negotiate something, so it's got a different date. And so he begins to tell me about this different date, and so I start flipping through the divorce decree, and I'm like, no, this is not a different date. This is the date that you actually got divorced. And I'm like, why did you lie to me? And so it was just the constant little lies. So at that point, I'm just like, oh my gosh, okay. So I was like, so he never really came clean. He stuck to his story. And then I just kind of brushed it under the rug. Everything was great. He was now divorced. Like, what did it matter now? I had already, been living with a married man for 6 months. Like, there was nothing I could do to change it. So I'm just like, okay, let me just brush it off and just move on. Let's just move on from here. So then we continued. Obviously there was a couple of days where I didn't feel good about it. But keep in mind, I mean, it was everything that I dreamed of outside of these little hiccups, quote unquote. And so we moved on from that, and his birthday was coming up. That was when, in May. Then July 4th came about, and we were getting together with all our friends at the lake. And so we had a great time. He felt a little bit more inclusive at that gathering because there's so many people there, and had a great time. That night we drive home, and we're having a deep discussion on the drive home. We get home, jump in the shower, get out, and he's on his bended knee proposing. Keep in mind, we already had the ring because we had already bought the ring. I had a friend who was a jeweler, and he gave us a really good deal on this ring. So I basically handed him $14,000 cash. I basically gave Sal the $14,000 because I didn't want my friend to know that I was handing this man who was going to be my husband $14,000 of my money. So I gave it to him in the parking lot. We walked in, we got the ring. So anyway, July 4th is the night he proposed. And he had already met with my daughter days prior, before he had decided to do this, except I didn't know about it. So my daughter agreed. She's like, I've never seen my mom so happy. Yes, I wish you the best. And so he proposed. And of course I said yes. So this was in July. We were happily engaged. The end of July, August. His birthday was in September. He had told me he had never really been thrown a birthday party because he was deployed all those years. He never really got to enjoy a birthday cake. He never really got to be around his family enjoying, his birthday. So I realized throughout this last year that he had no friends, really. He didn't have any friends. So I had tons of friends to share, tons of them. So I then began to, obviously I shared my friends. And so at this party, it was a surprise party for him. And at the end, he ended up finding out that I was planning a surprise party. So it wasn't really a surprise, but all my friends showed up. Everyone was super happy that I was happy and I was engaged. Everybody wanted the best life for me, even though all of them felt this from him. Of course, I didn't find out till later. Nobody wanted to really tell me. So all my friends showed up with the best dish prepared. The best dish that everybody brought was their best dish they prepared for this party for him. My ex-husband's best friend cooked the brisket for me even. It was just, they were friends and they wanted me to be happy. And so I invited his brother to come, and his brother never showed up. I made perfect cupcakes with our pictures on it. Everything that you could think of. Everybody embraced him. Everybody just made him feel at home, and just, everybody, it was the perfect birthday party, but he had not one person there. These were all my friends. So, that was then, after that, I realized, this was just going to be our life. We're just going to have to accept him because he was going to be my husband. So, he convinced me to get mutual phone plans, and this will come as to how everything ends at the end. So I decided let's combine our phone plans. So we did. And it kind of solidified everything, our relationship, I guess, that we were doing something together. So he ended up getting his phone, and one weekend he says, hey, I'm going to go to Kickapoo with the guys, and are you okay with that? And I was like, absolutely. I go out with my girlfriends. You go do a guy's trip, have fun, like really enjoy yourself. Well, I had come down with the flu. And the night before I was running fever and I was just not feeling well. Well, that morning he got up and he was ready to go. And keep in mind, he was always very thoughtful and very caring for me. And, but yet I was, sick with the flu. And you know how you just feel like you're dying when you have the flu. And I couldn't believe that he was still going to go on this trip. And so sure enough, backtrack a little bit, for his 50th birthday present, when we went to the jeweler to go get my ring, he looked at some of the watches that were displayed, and he loved one of the Tag Heuer watches. And he was like, I absolutely love that watch. And oh my God, I would love to have it. If I had the money, I would buy it. For his 50th birthday party, guess what I bought him? The Tag Heuer watch. And so it was a surprise for him. So on his birthday, I gave him that. Well, anyway, so fast forwarding again to his trip to Kickapoo, he wanted to make sure he had his Tag Heuer watch on. He had his nicest outfits. Keep in mind, throughout the year, I had bought him more clothes and filled his closet pretty much with more items. And so he goes to Kickapoo. All of a sudden, I can't get a hold of him. His phone is completely turned off. And I'm like, oh my God, he was diabetic. So I would set up his insulin syringes. I would set up his medication. I would make sure he ate properly. I mean, I was taking care of my man. Like, he was not going to do without. He was going to be treated like the chief that he deserved to be treated like, So I couldn't get a hold of him. So I thought, well, maybe his battery died. Oh my God. Then I started panicking. Oh my God, what if, he's got an insulin attack, something. I said, you know what? Let me go online, look at his phone history and see who the last person it was that he called. And maybe I can find out the number to the guys that he's with and maybe reach out to them that way. So I start looking through the phone call log and I see all these numbers, same number, all throughout the day. Keep in mind, he worked the second shift, so he was always at work from 3 to 11. And he would call this person every day after I left work. And then throughout the whole day, this number was called. Well, that was the last number he called. So, of course, I'm like flabbergasted because I'm thinking, here's this honorable man. He can't be. There's no way. He stands for something. He's been in the service for 20 years. So I call the number and it's a female, and I asked who that was. I didn't say anything back, and she just told me her name, and I didn't say anything. I was not going to get into a discussion with her over the phone, but it sounded like there was a lot of commotion going on in the background. And he was going to a gambling casino, and that's kind of what I distinguished. I heard like a lot of gambling going on in the background. So I knew at that moment that he was with her. And so he pretty much all weekend, I couldn't get a hold of him. He, on his way back, he calls, he finally turns his phone on. He says, honey, I'm on my way back. I said, okay, I'll see you soon. And so basically, that's what happened. And he says to me, you're too important to me. She means nothing. I was with the guys, but she came along because, we all worked together, and, but there was nothing there really, I promise. And, I believed him. So kind of brushed that under the rug, continued our life, as normal. And I said, okay, but I want you to promise me one thing. If we're going to move forward, unless you bring her around and she's your friend and we get to go have dinners with her and her husband, or we get to hang out and I'm involved in y'all's friendship, I'm okay with that. Just like you're involved with my friendship with my guy friend, then I'm okay with this. And he's like, okay, yes, we'll set up a lunch meeting. Well, that never happened. So a month went by, and I told myself I was not going to look at his phone call log anymore. I was just not going to do that to myself. I was too happy. We were going to be okay. We were going to make it, and it was going to be fine. I was just going to have to adapt to this friendship. and just his boundaries. So, of course, one day he calls me and he's at some place, random place. And he's at some random place. And sure enough, I look at his call log, and again, all her numbers were there. He never stopped talking to her. They were obviously having a sexual relationship. And he came home he was home that day. I drove straight from work, drove to my house. And I basically said to him, I prayed all the way home, God, please give me the strength to stand up for myself for once. Like, give me the strength to not be okay with this behavior. I will not tolerate it. I drive down the driveway. He's talking on the phone, smoking a cigarette. And basically I walked inside the house and I said, you are leaving. I grabbed garbage bags and I threw all his stuff in garbage bags. I said, that's exactly what you are, is garbage. So I pretty much threw everything in his garbage bags. I loaded up everything that I possibly could as he watched me. We drove and I said, where do I dump you? Because you have nowhere to go. And he said, take me to the Home Depot at so-and-so. My friend's going to come by and pick me up there. Drove there and he said, can you let me keep the truck for another week or two until I find other transportation? I said, absolutely not. I almost did, Chad. I almost let him keep the truck. But God gave me the strength to say no way. Because you know what? For a minute, I felt sorry for him. And I drove up to the Home Depot and I was so proud of myself. I unloaded everything by myself and I left him at the Home Depot parking lot and drove away.
And did you ever hear from him again?
So I blocked his number. I blocked him on Facebook. I said, we'll never put myself through this again. I went through some extreme heartbreak because this was the dream relationship I had wanted my whole entire life, outside of when everything started, obviously, the lies and the down spiraling. I heard from him a year later. He reached out to me at work and he says, will you ever wear that ring again? And I said, absolutely not. And I hung up and I have never heard from him again, outside of the fact that my friend reached out to me here the other day and said he had borrowed $300 from her and never paid her back. So, I hear some of the stories on here and see how women were physically abused and mistreated and just horrible, horrible things. And I listen to my story and it's not comparable to any of what those women have been through. But I'll tell you the heartbreak that I felt at the end of this, how distraught I was, how I was literally I found myself scraping myself off the floor after this relationship, that it was just as intense.
So, you're comparing, which isn't a fair thing to do. I mean, you were promised this future and you were love bombed and you really believed that, even though these little things were happening, you believed your strongest belief here was the belief of character. And
yes.
that a man like this, from the way, being vouched for, where he came from, more so than any other thing, plus the future, it was hard to shake. So, to come to the realization that you were conned and,
yes.
and used,
yes.
and then, kind of thinking about what was taken. How did you go about grieving this and dealing with shame? Because it's the biggest thing for people who are conned is, the shame that is attached to it. And,
yes.
There's a documentary that I always like to bring up, which is called Dirty John, which there's obviously a series as well.
Yes,
but there was
I've listened to that.
There was a documentary.
Yes,
and the one thing about that documentary, because it was a very entertaining documentary, the one
yes.
thing, as I've told the story many times, my opinion of this is the one thing it didn't do well was that it didn't tell the personality. You didn't say like how the person bought into this and why would they put up with this. And, you know, we know your personality. We know what type of person you are. You know, we know everything. We know why you did. So for you, are you able to kind of, or were you able to kind of break those things down and understand that? And how did that process go?
So I think the most shame I felt was that I tolerated some of the behaviors. For instance, there was one little story I left out. They were doing a hot sauce contest at his work place of employment, and my mom makes the best hot sauces in the world. Like, oh my God, you just lick your fingers with her hot sauce. So he had asked her if she would make a green hot sauce and a red hot sauce, and he took it to work, and they both won first place. So she had gotten $75 for each hot sauce that she entered, or he entered, because he entered. My mom just did it as a favor for him. I think the part that I felt the most shame in, it was the fact that when he won that award, the $150, which was nothing, I could have given my mom that $150 with no thought. But the fact that he didn't even give them to her, he won that. So he kept it. And the fact that I let him treat my mom that way, the fact that I let him stare at my daughter as she walked away inappropriately, and I caught him every single time, the fact that never in a million years would I ever allow anybody to disrespect my mom or my daughter, but I allowed him. That's where I feel the shame. That's where I felt like, how could you have allowed this to happen? You know, but, feeling guilty that I put my family through some of the things that I put them through, my friends through some of the situations that I put them through. Absolutely. But my friends are so forgiving that they've been nothing but supportive since day one. I remember being distraught, just driving home that day after Home Depot and just crying and sobbing like a baby because I just felt like a death. It was just a death that I had just gone through. I had lost the love of my life. So,
and for the people who are listening who might think to themselves, well, this isn't the same as the other stories. There's there's not a lot of devaluing going on. There's not a lot of all these kind of things that might put you into place. But for this specific type of person who is in the real con man type of person, this person, for their ruse to keep going, they're on their best behavior.
Yes.
They want that, they want that lifestyle to keep on going. They want to freeload as much as possible. So they're not going to do anything to jeopardize that on the front end. Obviously on the back end, he's doing whatever, he's cheating and doing that. But on the front end, he's not going to jeopardize that. So that kind of devaluation and putting you kind of through that every single day, as what a lot of the stories we hear, that's not going to happen in the situation because he needs this to continue as long as possible.
Yes.
And just to clarify that for people who might be wondering.
Yeah. And I think it was also all the lies that he told. I mean, he had the most brilliant disguise on. Have you heard that song from Bruce Springsteen, Brilliant Disguise?
No.
I remember I listened to that song over and over because he was dressed in a brilliant disguise. And I remember hearing that song over and over again because it was just like I needed to realize that he wasn't real. He was just not real. And it was just he played the best acting part of his life. I remember when I confronted him about this whole gambling thing and we stayed up all night having this discussion, and he looked at me in my face, straight, dead face in my face, and just, no, I didn't go with her. I mean, it was unbelievable. And how your listeners might get from this is that even though that you feel they're because we're so trusting of others, and a lot of the people that have been on your podcast, I know, are empaths, and I consider myself an empath because I can be in a room full of 200 people, and I guarantee you I'm going to stand next to the person who needs me. It happens every time. My friends always make fun of me because no matter what's going on, that person's going to find me in the room. And I'm going to end up helping someone, crying with them, or being some type of helping hand for them. And that's my philosophy really is having a helping hand. And so with him, I felt like I was, being that helping hand for him as well throughout all the situations that he went through. So it's just something that I can't explain. It was this fog I was under. And I'll tell you that like I said, I found myself scraping myself off the floor, but so coping, when you talk about coping, how I coped with all of it, how I got myself back together again. I'll give him this. He did give me the appreciation for traveling. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't need him to pay for my travels, flights or hotels. I wanted to make sure that I could prove to myself, not that he ever knew that I continued to travel without him, but that I was still able to do this on my own. I did not need him for anything. So how I coped is I went on trips by myself. I went chasing sunsets was one of my trips. Which was back to San Diego, because that was I remember a trip that was just memorable with him. And I wanted to just close that chapter and make new memories in San Diego. So I went chasing sunsets. I took another trip to Georgia and I went chasing waterfalls. I did that. And, hiking, writing. I love to write. I write short stories as well as poetry, which, those were my outlets. So, it took me a while to start feeling myself again. Sadly, when I thought I was good, solid, I rebuilt myself back up, like the Lego pieces. You put one Lego piece on top of the other, and eventually you end up forming something back together, a piece of art of some sort. That's how I saw myself, is putting myself back together, like in Lego pieces. And I felt like, okay, I finally put that, the hat on top of the head, the little heads that you put on top of the Legos. I finally felt like I had put my cap on, like I was done with the art piece. And of course I was led into another narcissistic relationship that was devaluing and all those other things. So
when we discuss that for just 1 second before we end the show, you found yourself back into another relationship, which was not great. And this one was more of a narcissist that we normally hear about on the show.
Yes.
So now that you're out of that one, because eventually I think we might do a recording of just that relationship for the Patreon.
Oh my gosh.
But now that you're out of that one, I know that's fresh.
Yes.
That one. So what does it mean now? Before I guess you were doing coping skills.
Yes.
So, and you were coping. It's not necessarily, you didn't do the work per se. Coping is not doing the work. So now that you're kind of in this spot where, okay, this has happened again, and now you have to do the work. Are kind of nervous to kind of delve far into how far it goes for you? Or do you think you've kind of started to slowly, maybe preparing to be on the show, to understand where you came from and why you'd make the decisions that you made, and why those exploitations or those manipulation tactics worked against you?
Yes. Truly, your podcast was a godsend. When I clicked on my Spotify and I clicked the search button, and I clicked narcissist on the search button, and you came up at the top, and I clicked on your podcast and I saw all the recordings, and I remember just swiping down and seeing all these stories, and oh my God, episode 20, episode 30, episode 50. And I'm like, I don't know if that's how you have them labeled, but you know what I'm saying, pretty much, with me scrolling to see which one I wanted to listen to. I was like, oh my God, this is a real thing. Like, I'm not alone here. And I'll tell you, with the stories that I've heard, the brave women that have told their stories on here, I thank you because of their definition of the things that they've experienced, or that they've been able to articulate. I don't find myself as being very articulate. Maybe I do more so with my writing and my poetry. But as far as conversation, I find myself having difficulties with my articulation. But these women, oh my gosh, I have heard some women have just impacted me so much. And because of those stories, I have begun to, like, oh my God, identify. Yes, this happened to me. That's what this is. This is what love bombing is. This is what fog means. This is what all the terminology that you use. You don't understand what you're doing, Chad, for a lot of us. And I think it's these revelations that are making me delve deep and being able to at least identify them and know what these things are. Like, I was lost. I was like, what just happened to me? And like I sent you in my email when I originally reached out, was like, I think I just realized what just happened. And this is just coming out of this relationship here, the most recent one. I was like, oh my God. And then all of it pieced together for me, from my relationship with Sal to my relationship with Jag. I'm going to call him Jag. For my relationship with Jag. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what's happened. And you've been, throughout the podcast, I've been able to identify why I attract these type of people, because this is how I've been raised my whole life around this behavior. So that's my normal. This is what my normal is. And so therefore, this is why I'm forgiving. And, so yes, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. I've been coping. Now, do I need to do the work? Absolutely, I need to do the work, but I just don't know how to begin to do the work. And I heard just, I probably listened to 4 or 5 today of your episodes at work. But there was one young lady, I can't think of the name, but she was amazing with her storytelling, and she talks about doing the work. And I'm like, okay, I need to be taught how to do the work, because I don't know how to do the work. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I obviously need to some type of counseling to learn how to do the work. The good thing is that at least at this point, I've identified that I attract narcissistic men. How do I need to now repel them is what I need to know.
That's a whole other episode, but we'll get there. We'll do an episode. I want to do an episode that's called how to do the work. Yes. I just have to find the right person to bring on. So yes. Before we leave, do you have any words of wisdom or advice for everyone who's listening?
Yes. So I read this meme the other day, and a couple of them that just I thought I could share with people. And it just said, be brave enough to say this is not what I want, is one, because that's our worst fear, right? Is you have to be brave to say that. And then also the other thing, that this one I kind of save and I have to reread, and it just says, I hope you find love, but more importantly, I hope you're strong enough to walk away from what love isn't. So even though you feel it's love, but because in our warped minds, because of how we've been conditioned to be, because this is maybe what I feel love has been, it's not okay. This is not the kind of love that I want. So I am very proud of myself because I have walked away from 2 relationships and finally stood up for myself. And so for everyone out there listening who can hear me and just love yourself first is all I can say.
Well, Alma, you have gone through a bunch of these relationships and you're relived it and you're out, and you should be proud of yourself that you're out, and you should be proud of yourself that you want to do the work and that you know that you don't want this to happen again, and that you're aware of everything. And it takes a lot, it takes to get to that point. Some people never get to the point of being aware of what's actually going on, and you've already started, and that's something to be very proud of.
And you should be proud, Chad, because of this podcast, you made me more aware. And you should be proud, because I can imagine you on this end of your microphone or your earphones listening to these stories over and over and over. I know how that must weigh heavy on you, but the fact that you're diligent and that you want to help others is you're self-sacrificing for so many people, because you're listening to these stories. And I know it has to do something. I know it has to do something to you after listening to these stories and to hearing us cry and all those. I know it has to do something to you, but you continue to do this. And so just know that it stems from you.
Well, thank you. And it means a lot. And, we're in this together. I like to call us an army. We are here to share your stories and help other people. And there was an not old documentary, but I'm going to say in the last 10 years, where the person in it said, your experience is only worth something if you share it with other people.
Absolutely.
And I took that to heart. That's the most amazing thing about the show and people like you who come on our show, is that your experience and sharing it is healing for you. But the most important thing is that, for, the thousands of people that are listening, that it helps heal them too, to know that they're not alone, to know that someone's gone through the same thing. And, it's also a learning experience. And, I like to think of everyone as we're all addicts, and we have to do the work every day, and you can't let up. And, you're going to be living proof of that. And one day we're going to talk again, and we're going to find out amazing things of what's gone on in your life. So, I just want to thank you for being here and sharing and, being part of it. And I know you're going to help a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
And for everyone else who is listening, from Alma and me, we hope you have a good night.